We're the only university in the California State University system entitled to grant a degree in dance. Since becoming a department in 1970, we've enjoyed continual growth. In keeping with the changing paths of the dance frontier, we're constantly updating our program. The high quality of our program has brought us many talented and dedicated professionals who continue to shape the dance world.
The chair of the department at the time, Joan Schlaich, was a real go-getter.
I could tell you stories about Joan Schlaich all day and all night.
So she was incredible. She started this department, I think with 1 or 2 classes in PE. That was it. And so she developed this department from scratch, basically.
Joan was always here, always everywhere. She was always in a rush. I think she never slowed down.
Joan was one of the singularly most determined people I have ever known in my life. She was an incredible politician. She didn't let anything go by, and she went after what she wanted ferociously and tenaciously.
I fell in love with the place. You know, I fell in love with Joan Schlaich and the dance department. And, you know, I really miss Joan. She was here 31 years, I believe. Never took a sick day. And she passed away 2 years after she left from cancer. So this was her life. You know, we really owe her for this building.
When I was a student, we were right there next to theater arts.
We were what we used to call up the hill by 7th Street.
We had a studio on top of the theater arts building, which was a real coup at the time.
TA 241, which Joan Schlaich had designed because the scene shop had such a high ceiling. She had somehow had them put a floor in and built the studio above the scene shop. There was nothing there before Joan Schlaich came up with this idea.
But it had a good floor, low ceilings, no air. So it was twilight zone when you'd spend several hours up there, and a very steep stairway.
And we had one studio in the PE building.
That had light and air, but the floor grabbed your feet.
And it was a basketball court, so it was a varnished, sticky floor that we tried to have dance classes on.
So the students and the faculty all day long ran up and down the hill.
East Campus Drive is how we know it today. We, as dancers, having to run up and down that thing every day, sometimes we'd have 10 minutes to get back up the hill. We called it Heart Attack Hill. You might have something up in TA 241, you'd have ballet, and then you'd have 10 minutes to zoom down the hill to PE, run in, you know, take your outer clothing off, and then jump right in.
And so we spent our lives running up the stairs, down the hill, up the hill, down to the basement, up to the... You know, when I look back at it, we did that for 17 years, and it was exhausting.
We used to hold concerts in the University Theater, which is up the hill on Upper Campus.
It was the University Theater. I don't know if you've ever been in there. The stage is like more than half smaller than the one that the students dance on now. I think it was only 20 or 25 feet deep and not much wider. And so, you know, the pieces that we made, the dances that we made were smaller. And I remember performing on that stage once, and it was like run, run off the stage, rather than run, run, leap and finish, you know.
We also shared the theater, the university theater, with music and theater. All of our productions were in there. And so we had no time. It was just get in, get it up, get it done, and get out. The scheduling classes was hideous, but trying to schedule rehearsals was an absolute nightmare. And of course, when we had guest artists, they were probably scratching their head. Of course, we'd been lobbying for this building or something other than tents and rooftops for years. And that somebody in the university, I guess its development office, had a potential donor.
I don't know exactly who she was, but she was very wealthy. She lived in Long Beach. She had no husband, no family. She was an only child, and she inherited all that money. And she left her entire estate to the university, not one department, but the whole university.
And I've forgotten what, she wasn't originally going to give the money to dance. I've forgotten what it was she was thinking about doing.
And Joan Schlaich again, she said a lot of people owed her favors. And she actually had a little black book with people who owed her favors. And she just reached in and took a bunch of millions.
To get plans made to send to Sacramento. And that was crucial. Without that initial money, we never could have had an architect draw plans and landscapes, and the kind of thing we needed to sell the idea.
And that's how we got the building finished, and what we did was we named the theater after Martha B. Noble.
Which, as far as I know, is one of the only theaters dedicated to just a dance program in a university.
But at the very beginnings of all of that, Joan had to pull strings here and pull strings there on campus to get funding. And we got funding, Joan, I think the idea was that we were also instituting the MFA program at that time. And so Joan said, we have this incoming MFA program and we need more space because we've got the BAs and they're all over, you know, we need to pull it together. We're growing and we're the only dance department in the entire CSU system. And so she made her strong case for all this funding, and we hadn't even been okayed yet for the MFA program, which was incredible. So Joan kind of kept the right hand wondering what the left hand was doing, if you will, on this campus. So she just moved around as if the MFA program was a go.
Keith Polikoff, who was a vice president and our primary dance photographer, once said, and I'm paraphrasing, that all the solar system has to be lined up, which only happens once in a millennium, to get something like this space.
This could never happen today. Administration is a lot tighter now than they were back in those days, and so this could never happen today, but it did then. Joan was good at that. The Gibbs architects came in and they looked at the space.
I'm Kurt Gibbs, AIA, and we are Gibbs Architects. And so when the money became available through the state to fund Joan's vision of literally decades to try and get this thing done, we were shortlisted and selected to do the work. And thus began a great creative partnership, but Joan was the user in charge, and she was very much in charge and very passionate about everything that was going into the building. The site we were given was only for the School of Dance, and we had the Performing Arts Center to go along with it, and we also wanted to keep room for the pyramid, which was supposedly coming right behind it. So that site constraint basically allowed us to think in a much more urban way about the project. It's one of the more dense projects on campus.
Before this complex was here,
Dirt. It was a big empty lot.
but this whole section of land where the Carpenter Theater and the Martha Noble and the Dance Center are,
There was a bunch of marble left down here from an aborted art department project.
So we were doing some things there, and then somebody being Joan Schlaich, looks at all of this area with all of these boulders and weeds, this huge lot with nothing in it. And she said, gee, that's a good place for a dance department.
so as you go through the dance department, you'll see these giant rocks in the halls and in the faculty lounge, and I mean, they are huge rocks. They must weigh tons and tons.
It's not just rocks, but boulders all over this place.
We found a whole bunch of huge marble remnants on the site that we hung on to. And
It's art, so let's just incorporate it.
And it found its way into our courtyard, and it found its way into the student lounge and into the faculty lounge.
And we ended up embedding those, again, just to give that datum of a stage height or a seat height, a place to stand and a place to perform, a place to stretch throughout.
And, you know, it was kind of a fun thing for the architects to do.
But the faculty really had a lot to say with the design of the building. I mean, the designer came with ideas, and you know, we looked at them and we approved or disapproved or changed.
I remember our first time coming in to see the finished studios, and we had been down here a lot during the construction, and it was great to see a bunch of dancers wearing hard hats.
Well, we didn't get to wear hard hats. Joan got to wear the hard hat. And she kept that hard hat in her car, and she was down here all the time. Well, some of us were sneaking around when we weren't supposed to be into the construction site because we wanted to know what was going on. I mean, it was terribly exciting.
Going back to the original essence of the project, we really did turn it inside out. And by that I mean we had 2 theaters, 2 stage houses, 2 public fronts. We turned those to the outside. And then we celebrated the inside, the performer's entrance, in the way of the courtyard that binds the whole project.
The orange wall in the courtyard was something Joan wanted.
I'm sure both Joan Schlaich and Celeste Kennedy had to pull a lot of strings to get it done, you know, because the designer did not want to do it. He thought it was against his, you know, aesthetic, but we won.
My name is Andrew Vaca, and I'm the chair of the Department of Dance. And when I was in my old office, I was very close to that part of the courtyard, and I used to love seeing people walk into the courtyard and stare at it and just sort of stand there and have no idea what they were looking at. And when I would see that, no matter what I was doing, I'd always get up out of my desk and go outside and explain to them that Laba notation is our notation system for movement, so that you can actually write down steps, qualities, movements of the arms, legs, body, all that sort of thing.
And it's just, you know, a couple steps. That's what it takes to, you know, that's just a few steps. And I think it's in 3/4 time, it's in waltz time.
And I do remember all of our efforts having to go to the Institute in New York for proper authentication that we were in fact speaking the correct language. And it was interesting. It was great to know that it's actually completely accurate. The Afternoon of a Faun was such a compelling piece.
At one point, they were thinking of making this whole building, including the Carpenter Theater, into the profile of Vlasav Nijinsky, the great Russian dancer.
And there is a moment in the piece that we extracted him from, and again left him here as a trace, if you will, 400 feet long and 42 feet high.
Because we're in the flight line for the landing plane, so they could have all looked down and seen Nijinsky's profile.
One of the best ironies about putting that together and making it all work was that Joan's office actually ended up in Nijinsky's head, and she was quite pleased about that.
Well, the first piece I remember working on after the new building went up was a piece called Evening Soul, which was choreographed by Susan McLean.
Even before we came here, we had people like Merce Cunningham and Viola Farber. But since we've come here, we've been able to get even more people. I think almost every important choreographer in this country has been through this department since the building. Yeah. Or somebody who represents them.
By choreographers like Martha Graham, Twyla Tharp, Paul Taylor, Arnie Zane, Bill T. Jones, David Parsons, Laura Dean.
Laura Dean was funny. She came here and she did the dance in 4 days, I believe. And then she left. And Andy and I said, well, what about costumes? What about what lighting you want? And she said, I'm going to Disneyland, you two figure it out.
Ballet works by Petitpas and Balanchine, but we've also had an amazing list of people who have come here and actually worked with our students. People like Janet Alber, Lynn Daly, Bill Young, Della Davidson, Alex Ketley, Sharon Kinney, Dan Wagner, Terry O'Connor, Doug Verone, Steve Kester, Jackie Buglisi, Frank Chavez. This list of people goes across genres of dance. We've had people like Steve Z come in to do tap pieces. We've had Ron Brown make an African piece. We've had people do modern works, jazz works. All sorts of amazing pieces have happened here at CSULB and have been danced by our students.
And we had the Green Table as part of Joan's goodbye concert.
You know, one of the reasons that I wanted to teach here was because I knew that if I came here as a faculty member, that I was continually going to be pushed as a choreographer. I had people like Jeff Slayton and Tricia Shapley and Keith Johnson and Susan McLean who were already here on the faculty when they invited me to join. And these are people that have been making works for years before this dance center opened and for the students once this dance center opened. And I knew that that professionalism was going to push me in my artistry and my choreography. After I got here, a lot of change happened, and you have a faculty that includes Doug Nielsen and Sharon Kinney, who were my teachers when I was in graduate school, and Sophie Monat, and then later Lauren Johnson and Colleen Dunnigan.
And we have dance science now. Wouldn't have thought of that before. Before Karen Klippinger came onto our faculty.
And we have a pretty amazing group of full-time and tenure-track faculty that have been making works for years, that have been premiering here at the Martha B. Noble, thousands of hours of dance.
And my name is Cyrus Parker-Jeannette, and I am currently the Dean of the College of the Arts. When I first walked into the building, actually, I was astonished. And I remember when this place was built and coming in as I was early in my faculty career at that time, teaching in a different institution in dance, and always terribly jealous of these facilities because they are so beautiful, they're so extensive. It's the Mecca. It's everything that anyone would ever want in a department of dance at a university, in a university setting. Long Beach State Dance Department has had prestige from the beginning, but particularly when this dance center was built. and under the amazing, I'll call it warriorship and politics and advocacy of the founder of the department, Joan Schlaich. I think that the Department of Dance and these facilities have fostered for quite a long time amazing art, dance making, and I believe that the creative process resonates far beyond this area.
I tell you, being in the dance world, I have really loved it. Dancers are special people. I mean, musicians are great too, but I'm a musician. I don't want to be around a whole bunch of other musicians. I want to be around the dancers. They're spiritually high-level people. They're wonderful people. And from the first time when I came here in 1980 till when I just retired, for the 30 years I was here, always felt like a family.
It was a total joy to teach here. Facilities, politics, all that aside, we had the most wonderful students. They're gifted, they were dedicated. Many of them had a super work ethic.
But I think overall the program has flourished in this building. You give a dancer space and just get out of the way.
It's an amazing tribute to this university that it allowed something like this to happen. You know, it doesn't happen in every university, and it was Joan Schlaich, obviously, and the rest of the faculty, but it was also the university who allowed it to happen, who gave it the budget, you know, and increased the budget over the years, and allowed this building to be just dance. So I'd like to thank the university and all the people that were involved in it.
What I hope for this department is that we just continually are able to train students to become the dancers and artists that they wish they can be. Because if we do that, then dance is going to be alive, and we're going to be around here 20 years from now and 20 years after that.